So, I know 3.4 is right around the corner as I am making this, and I wish I could have come up with some of these ideas sooner, except that it's kind of been accumulating over time and only clicked into place quite recently. Even the thoughts I have now aren't the most tightly knit theory, but it's still something I really want to talk about. I'm also going to apologize ahead of time for how much I have to reference things from Genshin Impact to get my thoughts across here. Blame the devs for making various aspects of Amphorius so Tevat coded. Anaxa's whole story and death have been bothering me, not just because he's the best and he is like my own personal little Conrian in Hoyo's space travel game, and I was sad to see him go and I miss him. Oh, how I clung to that one flashback of highest scenes in version 3.3. But anyway, no. His death bothers me because this man's story has so many loose ends compared to the other fallen Chrysos heirs. He says himself that he considers his fate incomplete. There are still censored words in his second character story. And what about all of his confident boasts about fixing this world and making it serve him? What happened to becoming the purest of them all? I mean, according to him, this is all just a part of it. Most importantly, his prophecy is not complete. He transcended the peaks of purity, but he never fell back to hardship and corruption. In fact, I think the jury is still out on whether he even reached the peak of his purity yet. Amphorius looks like it simultaneously plays the role of a prison for a Lord Ravager and an extrapolation experiment run by Nous. It is my belief that part of the experiment is trying to make the perfect human. Our ultimate goal is to refine all of the memories from the past cycles into a new world, and to create an emanator of destruction who is against Nanook, Phynon. Yet, despite our Golden Boy of Ruins story coming up in the new update, I remain focused on my demised scholar. Anaxa has some of the most obvious references to his associated Aeon, such as the little noose-looking shape on his collar. The red glare that is shown over Noos's eye is used in the X when Anaxa's name is displayed during his trailer. Now that the new Myriad Celestia trailer has dropped, we know that the stakes are high for Nous as well as the whole rest of the universe should Iron 2 manage to break his shell. This makes me feel like the loose ends in our erudition demigod story were left there quite on purpose. What does it even mean to become the purest of them all, anyway? Well, I think it means becoming the primordial human, which is also a dragon. Allow me to give a rather long-winded explanation that involves talking about Genshin Impact lore quite extensively. The main things we will be building off regarding Genshin are the ancient dragon race and the concept of descenders. The dragons could be considered as analogous to the Titans. It's not a one-to-one with everything we have learned about Amphorius now, but it is close enough for me. As for a descender, we'll get into what they are. To start, I want to discuss the real relationship between reason and the World-Bearer. In the myths regarding the Titans of creation, Kefali is described as the one who created humans in his image, while Circes is said to have given these humans the seed of wisdom. We know that Kefali is in charge of providing the memory imprint for the new world. However, I think ultimately, the relationship between World-Bearer and Reason comes to destruction and creation. Just look at how the world is being rebuilt in Anaxa's trailer while Phynon's path is destruction, and I mean just look at these abilities. As a part of analyzing this relationship, I want to take a closer look at how Hoyo recycles the philosophy of reason. To do this, I actually want to look at some themes from the Narcissenkroy questline in Genshin Impact. The Narcissenkroy Ordo was a secret organization founded by a researcher known as René de Petrichor. René was a prodigy, having calculated the world formula using research from an ancient kingdom known as Conria, when he was just a kid. The world formula proved a cyclical nature to the history of the world, making this whole scenario not too unlike Anaxa discovering the truth of Amphorius' cycle. René was from a nation called Fontaine, and the people of this nation were considered to be original sinners for reason we won't get into here. Because of this, they were punished with a prophecy of destruction via biblical flood. Therefore, Rene was actually looking for a way in which the people of his nation could survive the prophecy. He even put a big old doomsday clock on the ceiling of the Ordo, which feels appropriate for our Amphorius comparison, considering the whole world is effectively a dream bubble inside of a computer that is running doomsday simulations on a loop. Rene and Anaxa have quite a few overlapping interests, especially when it comes to research that involves metaphysical concepts like the soul. The Ordo had managed to use the Conrian research to discover and replicate the 4 components of the soul, which are referred to as the memory piece, the wish piece, the soul piece, and the persona piece. Combined, these pieces would form what the Ordo acknowledged as reason, the power to cut or unite any will of water. This is just a fancy way of saying it can cut or unite consciousness. Keep in mind that due to Amphorius' unique nature being entirely composed of memoria, Anaxa's alchemy is effectively just manipulating and reshaping this very same will of water. These old alchemy notes from Era Chrysia also refer to reason as a separating or cutting force, while Menestia's power is referred to as the uniting source. Among the more notable efforts carried out with this holy sword of reason, as it was sometimes called, was the creation of Caterpillar, who was made by implanting memories onto a hilly churl. Now, something that Caterpillar tells us is that despite reason often being associated with a sword, it can technically be any object that holds reason. Later on, Rene refers to Traveler themselves as an entity that represents reason. Traveler's description on the official site goes, "The Keeper is fading away, the Creator has not yet come, but the world shall burn no more, for you shall ascend." And this goes rather well with my theory that reason is more associated with creation. It feels like the purpose of Amphorius may be to create beings like Traveler, aka trying to create the perfect human. Since Trailblazer and Traveler are both meant to be stars, this may be why and how Trailblazer kind of counts as a similar being to a Chrysos heir, and was able to inherit a divine authority. Also, if you are wondering where Hoyo gets all of this theming surrounding reason and knowledge, I do believe that one of the sources for all of this is Hoyo's love for cooking things up with Gnosticism. The Gnostics were quite cool because they viewed Eve partaking in the fruit of knowledge as a good thing rather than the source of all sin. Although, the masses will naturally still view you as a heretic. Anaxa's goal, based on all of the stuff he yaps about, should be to seize this power of creation, this will of a world encased in a human, for himself. Which is exactly what Rene tried to do by becoming the Great Mage Narcissencroy, by the way. He was trying to absorb everyone and carry them into the new world through memory. So you could say he was trying to do the same thing Kefali does. However, as an incomplete order of the new cosmos, Narcissencroy was simply unable to carry out his dream. And what it all comes back to is trying to simulate the power of the primordial human, one who can reshape a world. Genshin Impact calls them Descenders. Teyvat is a closed system just like Amphorius, and the Descenders' power comes from the fact they are an external variable. Kind of like how Trailblazer and Dan Heng are in this story. The Chrysos heirs are probably made by refining the memories from past cycles over and over again. At the end of the cycle, when all of the core flames are returned, the memories of the Chrysos heirs are synthesized into one ultra-powerful demiurge-type figure. The fact that Rene's research was ultimately Conrian-based felt worth mentioning here because Anaxa is so Conrian-brained, which is something they also pulled into his aesthetic. The Conrians were basically a civilization of atheists who lived underground because they rejected the rule of the surface gods. And when their nation fell, they were all punished as sinners due to the actions of a few, known as the Sinners of Conria. On top of that, the names and themes used for people of this nation are largely inspired by Norse mythology, and Anaxa is a pretty obvious King Odin allegory. And the Conrians are important here because one of the 5 sinners, Rhindaughter, is also trying to create synthetic descenders through her Primordial Human project. As a part of her Primordial Human project, Rhindaughter also made dragons. And there is a book which I believe connects all of this together, because despite being a book in Genshin, I think it has everything to do with the golden blood present on Amphorius and throughout Fables Amidst the Stars Part 2. Especially since this book also contains a repackaged version of the struggle between truth and obfuscation that Nous and Mythos are intertwined in. It's called Men of Lithin, and it is related to both the Conrians and the dragon race that preceded the humans. All you really need to know about Men of Lithin is that it describes a technological world that has become dependent on a power source known as Lithin. This power source takes the form of a golden substance, and it is later revealed that Lithin is the bioenergy form of the primordial humans, who hail from an ancient technologically advanced civilization. They turned themselves into this collective wisdom goo after the surface of their world became uninhabitable to them. The story implies that the primordial humans were really dragons, and this lends itself well to Anaxa's new sporism and the idea that all souls are the same. Dragon souls are the same as human souls in the same way Titan souls are the same as human souls. This ancestral race would design beings compatible with the surface who were meant to aid in the biodegradation of the harmful substance. The members of this civilization who chose not to join the collective would be reincarnated amongst the humans on the surface, and they were referred to as the unenlightened. The unenlightened have a gland in their brains that secretes a substance known as the fog of reason, which prevents them from seeing the truth of the world. The leader of the unenlightened had created a substance known as the gas of ignorance, which clears the fog of reason and allows the unenlightened to view the truth. Lithin is connected to phlogiston, which is considered the primordial energy source of Teyvat, and is associated with its original inhabitants, the dragons. Phlogiston is also a thing in Honkai Star Rail, as it is a synthesis material described as the particles that form the flame. The Titans are supposed to be beings that came from fire, and I personally believe that the Titan core flames are meant to simulate phlogiston. A lot of it is just vibes, but I've been drawing connections for a while now between the Lithin, the golden blood, and this celestial ambrosia spilled from the star's own chalice. Mentioned in, Official's 2025 birthday post. I think we are looking at variations of the same idea, the same power, and it is all related to the power that star people like Traveler and Trailblazer have. Fables about the stars has only reinforced this idea because when Asat Premad flips his 20-sided die, it slows down over this shape that looks exactly like the Traveler's Sword of Reason shown in their constellation art. The primordial beings that roamed the universe prior to the Aeons were known as Dusk Leviathan. They devour cosmic stardust, and the Leviathan conception theory states that their remains seed new life in the cosmos while their dissipating life force transforms into astral spirits. I also assume a connection between Dusk Leviathans and the dragons of Teyvat, because Long the Permanence is said to be the progenitor of dragons, and I believe Long was a Leviathan. The dragon species in Genshin's lore are very, as Ashikai puts it, body agnostic. They don't seem to be very attached to any specific physical form, and they'll take on various forms by placing their consciousness in something called a core of Chuuel. Anaxa also doesn't seem particularly attached to his physical vessel either. This works very well with his Honkai Impact 3rd counterpart, who was still alive spiritually after his death. Like he became a force ghost, I guess. As I've said, I think that on Amphorius we are trying to refine all of the memories from the past cycles into a true world, a real Genesis. Something only the perfect human can do. The primordial human. And primordial humans are also dragons. So given everything we've learned, I believe there's a strong possibility that Anaxa is trying to become a dragon. No, not like the kind the Titans made. And certainly not a mere Titan. A true, primordial dragon. The kind that can unmake the divine. I believe his plan may be to immediately give up this power in an act of equivalent exchange in order to achieve all of his ultimate goals. Like a certain golden-haired alchemist from an anime. And that is how he will fall back to hardship and corruption. Anaxa's As I've Written may be completed, but the man himself is definitely not quite done yet. Thank you for attending this lecture and listening to my Anaxa-pilled nonsense. I've really been wanting to talk about all of these Amphorius Tevat parallels for a while, and somehow the Myriad Celestia trailer let me tie it all into one theory. I find it ironic how much I yap about Fontaine world quests in a book from Natlan, while outlining the similarities with Genshin here, when Anaxa actually teaches at the Sumeru Academia. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the engagement and to help this content in the algorithm. If you'd like to support my continued ability to make content, I do have a Patreon that starts at only $1 per month. It's been so long since I've uploaded because I've gotten quite stuck between multiple projects. I've been struggling a bit on my long scripts as I try to expand my circle of knowledge so that I can make better content with less mistakes. I also only ever originally planned to cover Genshin Impact lore, but as I learned more about the Hoyoverse in general, I started realizing just how much they repackage the same ideas over and over again, which just naturally led me to wanting to cover HSR and ZZZ as well. So I've had to work on catching up lore-wise in 2 other games now. My next project is another Anaxa-pilled thing that's attempting to use him as a lore sponge to unwrap the Hoyoverse. So look forward to that if you enjoyed this one, I guess.